Luxury Travel Docks here with a very special edition. We had the opportunity and honor to tour the National UDT SEAL Museum with Mr. Harry Lockhead. Harry was one of the original underwater demolition team members known as the Naked Warriors. You will hear firsthand the challenges, risks, and equipment these men used to win the freedom we enjoy today. Please enjoy our amazing discussion with this national treasure, and please take the opportunity to visit this incredible museum in Fort Pierce, Florida. Thank you.
This image is that of the lessons learned at Tarawa, which is where you volunteered to become a UDT. Can you tell us a little bit about the lessons learned there?
The lessons learned at Tarawa is that the obstacles in the water would not allow the Marines to get on the beach. And an awful lot of them either got hung up on coral reef, and once the PR boats with the Marines in it got stuck as a stationary object, there was no problem for the Japs to knock them off. So therefore, when one of those boats would get on an obstacle, they would open the ramp. The Marines would then go out into the water to try to get to the beach, and more of them drowned than were shot.
On this photo, we see a display with Admiral Draper Kaufman. Tell us a little bit about the Admiral, I guess, who was
Lieutenant Commander at that time.
Okay.
And he asked for volunteers to do swimming reconnaissance because aerial reconnaissance didn't do the job. And he says, when you go in there, if you find something, blow it up. And there was no manual to teach you how to do this, so figure out the best way to do it and write the manual.
So during World War II, there was still apparently segregation of the races, but apparently in the UDT teams, that was not the case. Can you tell us a little bit about that in this photo here with one of your teammates?
Well, we didn't segregate them as long as they could swim and do the job I could do. I'd swim alongside them. And the first black man that I had the honor to swim with was Fred Morrison. He come in to join one of us when we all came together to make Team 20. And since I was a senior petty officer, I was in charge of the 3rd Platoon, and he, as a black man, was a little apprehensive. I says, don't worry, I'm a man of color too. He looked at me, he says, what do you mean? I said, I got freckles. He's been happy ever since.
That's great. Progressive in all ways.
Yeah.
We're going to review some of your gear. In this picture, even though you were called the Naked Warriors, looks like you had some sexy boots there. Can you explain what those are and how you utilize those?
These are what we call coral boots, which are a minimum size tennis shoe, but high boots. And they were thin-soled, but very hard-soled. But they were small enough that we could fit them into our fins. When we got in where we had to walk or crawl across the reef or something, we could take off our fins to walk. We had the coral boots so they didn't get our feet cut to ribbons.
In this picture, we see your fins. Anything unique about these or their design?
Well, they're much smaller fins than they use today, so it took a little bit more leg power to utilize them. And that particular fin there we called the Churchill fin. I'm sure it wasn't after Churchill from England, but who gave it the name, I don't know. So that's what we called them, and they did the job for us.
In this picture, we see a lot of the gear that you used. Some apparently you did not use, but can you just give us a brief understanding of what we're seeing in this picture is?
Well, there's two things in this picture that we used. One is a piece of plastic, what we called slate. It was a writing tablet that we could write on, take notes of what we were seeing on reconnaissance so that we could forward it to anybody else that was in use for it. The other thing there is a lead line. That was used to take depths of water, and we used it exclusively, or I used it exclusively in Hakodate, where we had to sound the whole bay there so that when the occupying ships come in, they knew where to go without running aground, and how far in they could get, where they had to anchor to let the Army in as an occupation force.
We're looking here at a picture of a K-bar knife. Tell us about that and how you used it in your service.
Well, K-bar was standard issue. As I understand it today, the SEALs can pick the kind of knife they want to use. Back then, they gave you something and that's what you used, whether you liked it or not. It's an excellent knife. And it's basically used by us for cutting primer cord or keeping stuff away from us, like little dog sharks and so forth.
And do you still have yours?
Still have mine? Well, I gave it to my grandson.
So he has it.
He has it.
A treasure.
I hope he becomes a SEAL and uses it.
Now, I know you were the Naked Warriors, but at one point you said there was a time when you actually did carry a sidearm. Do you want to explain when and why that was?
Well, I carried the sidearm when I went into the city of Hakodate, which is on the island of Hokkaido, never knowing what was going to happen there. There could always be a crazy Jap that was still fighting the war. So I carried a Colt 45.
We spoke of it in our interview, but you developed some of the cast and recovery items that are still used to this day. This is actually a picture of one of those items. Can you explain that to us again?
Well, by explaining by the picture shows what it is, which is a piece of hawser wrapped in tape, figured into a figure 8, so you had a small loop and a large loop. The small loop was held by a man in a rubber raft that was pulled alongside of the PR boat, and he would hand the large loop to a swimmer in the water, and the speed of the boat would surface the swimmer, and the person in the rubber raft that was alongside could flip them right into the rubber raft with no trouble.
Prior to your development of this device, what was used before that?
Well, the first thing that was used was a monkey line, which is nothing but a piece of rope with knots on it. And that was a hard thing to hold on to and a hard thing to get to a swimmer. From that, it went to just a plain loop, which was hard, very hard to get to the swimmer. By stiffening it up with the tape and making 2 loops as a figure 8, it was very easy to stick it out into the water and a swimmer could grab it and pick it up with no trouble at all. Even if his arms were hurt, he could stick his leg through it and would catch it in his knee, and we could still fill him in.
This image shows a depiction of the Battle of Okinawa, and noticeably missing is UDT 20. Can you tell us a little bit about why that would be?
Because when Okinawa was going, UDT 20 was taking cold water training because our mission was going to be Japan, not the island of Okinawa.
This picture shows the surrender of the Japanese. Of significance is one of the pictures on the far right, the lower of the three. One shows a map, one shows a letter, and then the one below that. And that actual picture is in your memorabilia and photo album at home. Can you please tell us a little bit more about how you obtained or how you had that picture and where you were when that was taken?
Oh, that picture there was taken when I went into the city of Hakodate, which is on the island of Hokkaido, where there was a naval training school. And the officer there in that picture was probably the head officer of the naval base there. I brought them in my boat out to the ship, to my commanding officer, and he surrendered the island of Hakodate to UDT 20.
In this picture here, we see a cave. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
That cave, and there was many more of them, was in the Japanese naval base of Yokosuka. And you could bomb that mountain all day long. And when you finished bombing, they could just walk out and they would not be hurt. So if we had to swim in to that, as we did, we went in there, they would have just come out of that cave and we would not be here today.
Lastly, this is from your personal collection of items, and it appears to be a silk map. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And why would you make maps of silk?
So they wouldn't deteriorate in salt water.
Was there lamination back then, or
Not that I know of.
So silk was the...
We had to use what we had. There was no way of protecting it.
This map appears to be in pristine condition. Were you just that meticulous with it?
No, it just I didn't have to use it because Truman dropped the bomb and saved that map.
And saved you.
It saved me.
We hope you enjoyed this edition with Harry Lockhead, and we hope you have the opportunity to visit the museum. Always remember to make meaningful and healthy travel happen, and be safe in your travels. Thank you for watching.